Hi everyone, what's going on? It's Ben here. I am back again today doing another movie review. Today we are going to be talking about the film Cabaret, based on the musical and also based on the book that the musical was inspired by. Cabaret came out in 1972, starring Liza Minnelli, Michael York, and Joel Grey, amongst others. It is the record setter for winning the most Academy Awards without winning Best Picture. Some of the notable Academy Awards it won, as pictured on screen, are Best Actress for Liza Minnelli, Best Director for Bob Fosse. It also won Best Original Score, Best Original um, Song, amongst others. Best Supporting Actor for Joel Grey. Yeah, so I will be talking about a few different aspects of Cabaret, basically my overall thoughts, and then the acting, the direction, the writing, um, the editing, and then also I'm going to talk about I guess you'd call it like overall like music and choreography would be the last thing I'm going to review. Being a musical, I think that it would be key to be reviewing that aspect of the film. And let me talk about that first, the music and choreography. I think it's very well done. Bob Fosse was a director well known for doing musicals and writing choreography, and he does a very good job in this film. There are quite a few songs being a musical. They're all pretty good and they keep your attention. The ones that come to mind most for me are the opening song, which is, I believe, called Welcome. Um, the last song, which is I think just called Cabaret, that Liza Minnelli sings at the end of the film, and then there's one that's called like Tomorrow Is Mine, which is sung during the latter half of the film. Um, and I'll get back to that song later because I think that scene where that song is sung is possibly one of my favorite scenes in the entire movie. But um, talking about the film from this choreography standpoint, very well done. Um, a lot of the choreography, so to speak, is done by a lot of the dancers in the cabaret, Joel Grey and Liza Minnelli, and they all do pretty well. I heard somebody once say that Bob Fosse writes very athletic choreography, that you have to be able to do a lot of different things to be able to pull it off. As far as just your physical ability, that seems to be the case in this film, as there's a lot of jumping and dancing around on screen while they're singing, and Liza Minnelli and Joel Grey take it all in stride and do pretty well with it. So yeah, I would say choreography, singing, songwriting, I think that's all very well done and definitely a strength of this movie. Um, Besides that, let's see here. I guess we'll hop into the acting next then. So I think the three main performances I want to focus on are Minnelli, Michael York, and Joel Grey. Um, Liza Minnelli obviously won an Oscar for this. People think of it as like her signature role. I I think that she does good in it. I don't know if she's necessarily like Oscar worthy. I think she has the showiest role. I think the movie's the most about her of anybody. She has the biggest role. Um, she's a main focus of the entire thing. A lot of the basically all of the plot kind of flows through her and her interactions with the people around her. Um, there's something just about her character maybe that just doesn't allow me to connect with her very well in this role, and maybe that's the point, and if that is the point, then I think that she does a good job of conveying it. There's no huge scene I feel like where she like pours her heart out or does a big monologue or has some very um, emotive speech or anything like that. Um, there are smaller moments like that, but I don't think there's like there's no one big signature moment I can point to and say, oh, that's what the scene that won her an Oscar, I guess. Overall, it's just pretty solid and consistent the whole way through. And I think when you factor in the singing and choreography that she did, it is worthy of a nomination and potentially an Oscar. Um, but yeah, I think my hurdle with liking the acting is that I don't really like the character, so it's hard to enjoy the acting then, but that's just my own problem. Um, Michael York, who is, I guess you'd say, like our main male protagonist, um, I actually find his character a lot more interesting than Liza Minnelli's, but I also find the acting worse. Like Michael York, I've seen him in other movies. He is he's a fine actor. In this movie, though, he feels flat to me throughout, and um, that's partly because his character seems to be sort of straight laced and kind of dull, actually, in some aspects. But I feel like he could have brought more like oomph to the role than he did. Um, the character just oftentimes ends up leaving me a little bit bored and feels a little stale and emotionless. And, that's partially what the character is supposed to be. But also, I just feel like there could have been more um, zeal to his performance, I guess I should say. And then the last major performance I'm going to talk about is Joel Grey. Man, I don't know where to start with this performance. He won Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. Um, this performance is very hard to break down because I think, the more I think about it, I don't know if he actually technically has much of any dialogue with any other character directly besides just like what he's doing on stage and singing. I don't think he has any moments off screen where he's just like talking to people, if I do recall correctly. When he's on screen, he's very, I don't know if the word is compelling, but it's hard to take your eyes off of him. And he conveys a lot of the interesting themes of the movie that involve like um, the reflection of what society thinks. Like he reflects the anti-Semitism that was rising in Nazi Germany at the time. Um, and he reflects kind of like the modern state of Germany at the time of this movie at certain points. And um, his performance is very, I don't know what the right word is. I feel like it's not charismatic, but I guess the best way to describe it is you just can't take your eyes off of it while you're watching it. Um, as far as the direction, or let me talk about the writing first, actually. The story is, to me, good but flawed. The major flaw to me is from the adaptation of the stage play in the book to the film. They cut out apparently what was a pretty interesting subplot of two um, two Jewish people in love who would eventually have to flee Germany because of the rise of Nazism. They cut that out and in place kind of put in this subplot that was a sizable chunk of the movie involving um, a Jewish person falling in love with a Protestant, and the Jewish person having to pretend that he was a Christian to avoid the backlash of being a Jew in Germany in the middle 1930s. And it's a really flat side plot, and really honestly takes away the momentum that the movie has. This is like a little bit over 2 hours of a movie. They could have just, in my opinion, cut that side plot out and had it run at a nice like 1 hour 35 minutes or an hour 40 minutes, and it would have been just as good of a movie. Yeah, so that aspect doesn't really add anything to me. Besides that, I guess the general plot, I'll just sum it up really quickly here. But the plot is like you've got you've got Sally, played by Liza Minnelli, who works in a cabaret show, which is emceed by Joel Grey, and she lives in a boarding house and meets a fellow boarder who's played by Michael York, and he might be gay, might be bisexual. When they meet, they don't really know, but then eventually they enter a romantic relationship, and then they meet like I guess you'd call him a playboy, and he starts kind of trying to seduce both of them, and they kind of enter into this weird love triangle. And from that aspect, those are all really interesting themes to be approaching in a story in the early 1970s when these kinds of subjects weren't talked about a ton. So it's very interesting from that standpoint. Um, I think again, my only problem with the writing is that um, the story to me never really picks up momentum. There's never momentum to the story whatsoever. It's just kind of like wandering, it feels like, throughout the entire script. Um, it does get dull at certain points, and I feel like that has to do with the meandering nature of the plot and then also the side plot that really adds nothing to the story but takes up a decent amount of time. So cut those things out, and I think the writing is spot on. Um, the direction, um, actually, let's see here. I'll talk about the direction first and then the editing. Direction, fantastic. Bob Fosse does a great job. Um, really does a good job incorporating the music with the I guess the non-musical parts of the movie, and he does a good job of kind of taking the musical genre and flipping it on its head. It's not a very positive movie, and typically at that point musicals were seen as only being positive, so he kind of takes this really depressing story and makes it a musical, which is a very interesting twist. Um, he has a couple of key scenes that I just love. I love the ending a lot, that sequence, how he positions in the audience like all Nazis, and that's a really good callback to the beginning of the movie where Nazism was just on the rise and there were only like a few Nazis here and there in the club, and at the end it's nearly all Nazis. That's a really subtle thing he does throughout, and he does, if you don't know, the plot is like taking place in Germany during the middle 1930s while Nazism was on the rise but not yet like fully in power. But sort of by the very end of the film, like Nazism has kind of like started to become the normal there. Um, there's also this great scene in the middle to latter half of the movie where um, Michael York and the Playboy are at like a picnic kind of restaurant outside, and there's a young boy singing, which is the song I talked about earlier called like Tomorrow Is Mine, and it does a real close-up shot on his face, and this is part of the editing too, so this is blending in with the editing section that I talked about, but it slowly pans out from the young boy's face as he gets towards the end of the song, and it's sung really beautifully. It's a song that's about like hope and looking forward to tomorrow and a lot of promise. And then right at the end or towards the last couple lines of the song, they pan out from his face and you see that it's a Hitler Youth in a Nazi outfit, and you go from kind of feeling this sense of joy and enjoyment to this sense of um, I don't terror sounds like an extreme word, but I guess that's the word you would use. And then towards the very end of the song, a bunch of the crowd start joining in to sing the last couple lines, and you kind of get this eerie feeling of like all these people are getting brainwashed by Nazism, and it's really really cool. I love it. It's one of the best direction choices he made throughout the whole movie, and I just love that sequence. Um, Overall, though, the balancing of the music with the rest of the plot is phenomenal, and Bob Fosse knocks it out. And to me, I think it's a deserved Best Actor or Best Director win. Excuse me. The editing, there's a lot of interesting editing going on here. I noticed that there are some sequences of the songs being sung where the words that are being matched up, like people's mouths, don't match up with the words being sung. Um, there's probably some deeper meanings that Fosse was going for in the editing there. I didn't completely understand them all necessarily, but um, he's conveying some themes of like anti-Semitism on the rise too at certain points with certain dance numbers, and he cuts in between certain shots during songs where he will like show a seemingly unrelated image while in the middle of a song, and then just go right back to whoever's performing it and things like that. I think it conveyed what he was trying to convey, and I would have to like dive deep and do some really key researching to find out exactly what he was going for, but it seemed interesting and like caught my attention while I was watching it, so I liked the editing fairly well. If I had to kind of sum up all of these different categories and I guess give them a grade or a rating, I will give the um, musical aspects I'll give the musical aspects A. I'll give the acting a B. Um, the writing a B minus or C plus, right in there. Just parts of the story really drag and are dull, and other parts just don't even need to be in the movie, like the subplot I mentioned. So the writing is really, I think, the weakest point of the movie. Um, Direction A, and editing A minus. So if I had to give an overall rating to the movie, I think I would go with a a B, and that's just my personal taste. And why it might be lower, despite a lot of giving it a lot of high marks, is to me, um, there are parts of it that I love, like that one sequence I talked about with the song being sung by the young teenager, and a few of the musical numbers, and a few of the ideas of the plot. But I think the writing really actually handicaps this movie the more I think about it, and they could have just done a lot differently, I think, in the adaptation that would have improved the experience for me. And I also give like a lot of weight to the plot of a movie, and I don't know, the plot just was a bit unsatisfying at points for me. But overall, a good movie, worth the watch, um, just to appreciate the historical aspects and the direction. The directing is really good in this movie. If you dig that and dig like composition and the theme aspects of like anti-Semitism and sort of like I don't want to say brainwashing, but like the subtle rise of Nazism. It's so cool how he does this in the background of the entire plot. This whole Nazism on the rise thing. So definitely check it out. I don't know any major platforms it's available on right now. You might just have to buy it on Amazon. But yeah, overall, I'll give this movie a B, and definitely worth a watch if you're into historical films or musicals. So have a good day, guys, and I'll see you next time. Bye.